how giddy, like as that was about to happen, right? It was so difficult for you to contain that excitement. You were vibrating, dude.
I know. I was like, I'm going to give it away.
Wait a second. And we could hear, as Eric and I were talking, we could hear your excitement. Like,
yeah. It wasn't even just like coming through his mouth, Matty. His butthole was like, so excited.
This is the Inkpulp podcast.
How much do you want to bet that he just slept through it right now? Like he completely forgot that we do this thing.
He definitely forgot.
And I did because typically what happens is, on the day before, maybe 2 days before, you're typically checking in. Hey, is everybody okay with today? Blah, blah, blah. But for whatever reason, I'm going to guess is because you had company during the time or, you were like, you didn't check in at all. And so he just straight up like, oh no, I have a podcast that I'm investing in,
Right. But I did put it in the calendar. So at least I did that.
No, I'm just kidding. He's here.
Hey, brother.
oh, so you started without me, you motherfuckers?
We were talking shit about you.
Just before you walked in, we said like, how much do you want to bet that this guy straight up forgot? And you didn't.
No.
You just remembered 4 minutes later.
No, absolutely. I was finishing a couple of things working related.
Listen, what does it feel like to be the guy that everybody wants drawing their stuff? I've never felt it before in my life. You're that guy in our group.
Yeah, you are that guy. Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's awesome.
You should try.
Dude, I can't. I've tried and tried, and it doesn't work for me. I don't know. Clearly, you don't think I've poured 15 some odd years into trying, and it just doesn't stick, man. It happens for like a split second.
Hold on,
and
guys.
it goes
Someone's
away.
at my door. I'll be right. Hold on. Go ahead.
It's Eric. It's because the industry is still racist.
Oh, against
so, evidently. They don't like either Filipinos or Jews, evidently.
They don't like Filipinos
They're cool
or
with
people
Italians.
Are they?
So,
okay.
At least.
I'm going to put that in my job application.
Or I'm so good that they have to go against their racism.
I think it's that second part, pal. Mm-hmm. Is it, at some point, did you recognize where in your career, where in your trajectory, where you're like, oh, this is working? You know what I mean? Like where you turn the corner, where you go, oh, I'm an act. I don't have to worry as much as I used to. Did you ever go through that, or did you ever have that feeling of like, oh wow, this is really taking off. This is really doing well for me.
I think I've always said
there
that.
He is.
Oh my God, guys! What's up? It's me. It's Shawn. I'm back. Listen, I love sensual things. We were at the restaurant last night, you guys, and the flavoring of the food, it was incredible. Mattteo, I went out and I got us new matching Hawaiian shirts. I'm sending one your way, bro. It's going to be incredible. We'll wear them at New York Comic Con in October, and then we'll go shopping, and then I've got some commissions to do, and then I'm going to make a sensual espresso drink, and everything is going to be, the flavoring is going to be incredible.
There it is.
There's only one thing missing is Shawn annoying voice, like if you change the pitch of your voice to a more
Jamie's going to be able to pitch that up a little bit and be closer to.
Jamie can just cut and paste Shawn on top of my
But
head.
also the language and the vocabulary that you were doing, Jim.
Yes,
way too sophisticated. It's way too sophisticated for Shawn.
I've been here for 5 days. I've been studying him.
What do you call it? The performance, on the other hand, is Oscar worthy, right?
Yeah, thank you.
But if a historian comes by and watches the performance, they'd do a YouTube critique about how Shawn in his life could never utilize the term sensual as easily as you did. That's a descriptive that you've had.
Last year, 2 years ago in New York, Mike Huddleston nicknamed Shawn the Sensualist.
Yes,
because we were we were after dinner, we were walking when we were all in a bit of an altered state, and Mike made this profound observation. He's like, Shawn, everything about you is about like sensory, the inking techniques, the food, the coffee. He's like, you're a sensualist. And I was like, that's Shawn's new nickname. He's the sensualist.
The sensualist. Yeah.
This is a profound moment.
There is this study that people do in as far as experiences are concerned. And the way it was explained in the article was that whenever you can kind of tell what kind of people, how they experience the world. The example that they gave was when a person goes to a concert and you have them describe it to you. They say some people goes, oh, you should have seen what it was like. So everything is very visual for them, right? Like, oh, there's a ton of different people, blah, 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 right? And then the other one is, oh, you should have heard. So that sensory, that's becomes their sort of experience. That's how they experience the world is through audible. Mm-hmm. And then there's the one that's I'm gonna fuck up the way they pronounce. Is it kinesthetic? Is that what it is? Kinesthetic? I can't remember the term.
Don't even know.
But it's primarily about the feeling of being there. Right. So I think Shawn is that. Shawn won't remember a color of something, probably can't remember the sound of something, but the way he felt in the moment, right? When he's like experiencing food, experiencing inking, experiencing whatever the heck, right?
Yeah.
Having a butt plug put inside of him.
And he's going to tell you,
I've heard the stories. They're terrifying.
Spending
it's all terrifying.
like 30 to 60 minutes to tell you.
I'm laughing because like this one earbud of his just won't stay in my ear. And I feel like even his earbuds, speaking of butt plugs, like even his earbuds are some weird custom. He's like, you got to put the earbuds in before you go on to fuck with these guys. But I don't want to take up too much time.
He doesn't usually put that earplugs. He doesn't usually put it in his ear. I don't know if you know that one thing about Shawn. He likes the vibration. Speaking of feeling,
I sanitized. I'm a little scared. But I'm Shawn, Mattteo. I mean, we're talking about him like he's a different person. It's still Shawn. It's here.
Okay, let me ask you this, Jim.
No.
How long did you guys scheme about
this? Was just decided on last night at dinner.
Okay.
Like, oh, well, let me just pop in for like a quick second and say hello. Yeah. But I don't want to capitalize the time of the show.
Dude, to be perfectly honest, I would prefer that you stay on and he just goes on his phone.
Yeah, I was about to say the same. So you can stay, Jim, for as long as you want, even for next episodes, like even from now on.
From here on down,
be there. Instead of Shawn. Yeah.
I might move into our buddy Ali's house just because he has this beautiful home and is like, I would have my own wing of the house, basically.
Dude, I got to show you this place that I found local to me, Jim. It's like the frickin' Harry Potter castle. That's
damn.
It's so beautiful. And I'm like, that's not a real place. That's like one of those, you go into Condé Nast and it's George Clooney's house up in the frickin' Italian villa.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Speaking of which, Como 2025.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about that?
That feels good. Although Matteo's probably sick of it at this point. I just saw an ad, or I just saw an Instagram post for his appearance at Lake Como this year. No.
Oh, really? Did they? Oh, okay. So I should start advertising.
Yeah. Maybe it might be wishful thinking on my part. I hope
you have to be there by default, dude. It's like in your.
So you guys are gonna be there next year for sure.
Next year.
Is that good? Is that true? Okay.
Or some. That's one of the things we're scheming is an Italian thing for next year.
Yeah.
Oh, Shawn's other Shawn is yelling at me, Bologna. But we'll figure that out. That's my subconscious. I mean,
that'd be absolutely nice. The only thing is that the guy that usually runs the artist alley doesn't work there anymore. So, and I don't know who's gonna take his place, and I don't know if I know this person. So, I'll try and get in touch with this new person.
No pressure on you, man. Like,
it'll work out.
It might be a thing of just go to Italy anyway. Just
like for instance, if Mattteo gets a table at Bologna, right? we'll just go hang out with Mattteo. I mean, it's such a fun. Every time we all get together, right? It's just a fun hangout anyway. If it happens to be like business related, that's cool. But just being able to see Matty and make fun of him from afar, that would be great.
Definitely. Yeah, man. We'll figure it out. We'll stay in touch with it. But guys, I'm going to go so Shawn can pop back in. But since I'm sitting 2 feet away, I just figured I'd jump in and say hey real quick.
Always great to see you. Always
great
wonderful
to see you guys.
Yeah.
Great to see you, brother.
Awesome dudes. Take care.
Mwah.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
So we're gonna, Matty, we're downgrading the show since Jim left. You know.
Yep.
It's a downgrade from here. Yeah.
Now he gets back to being a really shitty show. In 3, 2, 1. That's it. Back to shitty show.
How giddy, like, as that was about to happen, right? As that was happening, how, like, it was so difficult for you to contain that excitement. You were fucking vibrating, dude.
I know. I was like, I'm going to give it away.
Wait a second.
And we can hear, as Eric and I were talking, we could hear your excitement. Like,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, he's planning something. Okay, so something's going to happen. And that's what happened.
It wasn't even just, what do you call it? It wasn't even just like coming through his mouth, Matty. His butthole was like,
Yeah.
fucking
Every
exciting.
orifice of his body was stalking and moving and making sounds out of excitement.
We have
So
to
good.
make the teaser for this episode. Eric mimicking my butthole noises. That was fucking amazing.
that brings in the fucking crowd. I'll tell you what. Hey, let me get back to this thing before you did the. By the way, Jim, thanks for swinging by. That was really freaking awesome. Always great to see you. You have an open invitation to come and take Shawn's place anytime that you want.
You're welcome to come take my place anytime.
Anytime that you freaking want, pal. Always great to see you. Swing by anytime.
For a moment, I was expecting Shawn saying, "Hey, Jim," like looking down. They're telling me that you can take my place whenever you want, right? Okay, you can continue now. Okay, thank you. Hey, Jim,
You guys are on fire.
What?
We're gonna get kicked off of YouTube.
Oh shit,
So much
that's
fucking
funny.
fun. All right, I want to follow up to something with Mattteo because I'm curious about this. If he made note of it, right? I make a note historically of where I thought Matteo's like body of work, but that's from an artistic perspective, right? From a professional space, and we were joking about how it must be so hard to be so popular, and I've never experienced it, blah blah blah. But I got to be honest with you, I don't think I have, at least not in the capacity that Mattteo has. Yeah. So I was curious.
I think
had you made a note, Matty, and if you're like, oh wait, this is career on well, forget the term, but like this is career on easy mode now. You know what I mean? Where not only is the craft catching up, but also the professional sort of like, how would you phrase it? Like the
Okay, so
at, right?
I think personally, like I think there's two main moments.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily connected to an money bump.
Okay.
But it was just they were just huge confirmation on the fact that I could make it, basically. Like personally, I've always been like convinced on the fact that I had enough talent, but I probably needed some exterior element to confirm that, so
like
the
external
2 moments,
validation.
yeah, external validation, but it didn't take much. You'll hear the two examples. Like I think it was just a bomb ticking and ready to explode, and it just needed a couple of nudges, and that's it. So one was it was years ago. I wasn't even a professional yet, and it was a time when I decided, okay, I'm gonna start and make moves in order to, make myself visible out there, because before that, I was still in that, I don't know. And I don't know how to describe it. When you still waiting for things to fall out of the sky, and you're waiting for yourself to be noticed, but without doing anything, like just because you're entitled, because I was young, that's what you expect when you're young. And so that was the moment in which I started, okay, I'm going to do shows. I'm going to start bringing my portfolio to shows and show it to professionals. I'm going to start participating to contests and stuff like that. So there was a big contest in Italy back then. And every year they had a big jury, and the prize was really nice. It was a few €1,000 for a 5 pages story. And even professionals were participating because of this prize. And that year I won. And I remember the moment, because I was in Spain. I wanted to see a show. And as I was there in the evening, the organizer of this contest called me. And then he passed me on the phone Sergio Toppi, who was in the jury.
Yeah.
And he personally communicated to me that I won. And then, he gave me some suggestions, some advice on how to fix stuff here and there. But he told me that he really liked the story and the way I told the story, basically. So that was the moment. That was the main moment. I remember, like, clearly, was the moment in which, like, okay, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And the second moment was a confirmation, but I was already in that state of mind, to be honest with you, of I'm going to make it no matter what. But the second moment was, the second time was when I think it was 2000, maybe 2007. So Marvel had started this thing called the Chester Quest, where C.B. Cebulski, who back then was, I think, a talent scout for Marvel.
Yep.
I think that was his position specifically. They decided to send him all around the world for 1 year, basically doing a show almost every weekend all around the world, in order to find 12 new talents. And I remember sending, you could send stuff by email, and then if there was a chance, you could meet him in person at shows. So I sent him stuff by email, and he told me that he really liked them, and he would really like to meet me in person. So back then there was Angoulême in, I think, January, February, and I was attending that show. So we met. And by the way, I was just a visitor of the show. I wasn't really working. I was doing my first, gigs in the business, but just small things. And we met in person, and he told me, okay, I didn't want to tell you by email, but I've already decided, even though it's just January or February, whatever, that you're going to be one of the 12 selected. So I'm going to tell you right now.
Yeah.
So that was a second confirmation. But to be honest with you, the main moment for me was that call with Toppi. I really, as I told you, it's fun to say, but also it's really true. I just needed that little nudge, like a professional telling me, a person that I'd really, value the opinion of, just telling me, you're good. So that's where
the ego started. You know what I mean? Like, it was, you tried to keep it at bay for like the longest time, but that was. You want to talk about the ego has landed.
And just
that was
being serious for a second, speaking of ego, like, okay, so I won the Chester Quest, the Marvel Chester Quest, and I got to work with them, like, actually, like 2 years after, the whole thing was announced. So the winners were announced. And I worked with Marvel for a second because they gave me a lot of Deadpool titles, but then they all got canceled. So I I couldn't work with them anymore. Like they stopped, you know, sending me scripts and stuff. But I never felt like, oh my God, I've been downgraded or anything. Like I remember starting working with Boom for like a good probably year or two. And I wasn't worried at all. I was making way less money for way less important projects. But I wasn't worried at all. I was like, okay, so, you know, that happened with the Deadpool thing. But I'm, you know, sooner or later, I'll be back at Marvel, working with Marvel. It's not going to be maybe this year. Maybe it's going to be 2 years from now or 3 years. I never been frustrated with that because in my head, I was convinced like, yeah, you know, this is just a misstep and I'm going to be back where I left like next year or so, you know? So
that's cool, man. That's great. Actually, what I was asking about, and that's amazing background. I mean, there's a ton of stuff I want to follow up on, but the one I was actually talking about was when here you are now, X amount of years removed from that first time that you spoke with Topi, right?
Yeah.
Is that was the time, or actually, no, not that I'm thinking about the question. That was the time where you just thought like, man, my career is going to be fine. You never thought about like,
that was the time. Know? Yeah. Even if I didn't have a career, I already knew that my career was going to be fine.
Oh, that's interesting.
Because that opened
so
up,
cool.
like it gave me kind of the, I don't know to say, like the authorization to do what I wanted. So from then on, it's always been like, okay, you know, now I in my head, I was already a comic book artist, a professional comic book artist. So I would be attending show, investing money in traveling and all this kind of stuff. Because to me, it was all an investment that was going to pay off. I had never had a single dub in my head that, like, there's a lot of people who are like, okay, I'm going to invest, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000 in the strip, but I don't know how it's going to go. I never had that thing of I don't know it's going to go. Am I going to lose this money? It's always been like, I'm going to spend this money and never think about it, you know?
Yeah. That's so cool, dude.
Because in my head, I was going to make this money back. That was going to happen, you know?
Yeah. You just knew it. You were just like, that level of confidence was already inside of you to be like, yo, I'm going to spend 2,000 euro, whatever it may be, but I'm going to make this money back, if not more. Right.
Yeah. I think it goes back to that, seeking opportunities. Like once that thing had clicked in my head, all I would see was opportunities. In my head, I was like, oh my God. So I'm a comic book artist. There's a lot of shows that I want to see, a lot of professionals that I want to talk to, and I'm going to do a lot of books. That's it. You know?
Now, to give context, because I often think about the kinds of people who are listening to the shows. Oftentimes it's just people who just want to hang out, to click on the YouTube show. But I think there's a handful of people who actually show up to this thing because they have they're fans of yours, right? Like, I like what Mattteo does. I like the not just the art, but obviously his attitude towards like drawing and overall career. I'm trying to think of it from their perspective to be like, what's their big takeaway when it comes to hearing you say something like that, right? Number one, like it wasn't as if you were well off, Mattteo. Well off is like, it's not like you were rich, right? It's not exactly that you were poor, right?
Not at
but
all.
You knew investing in yourself, right, goes a long way, right? You weren't, I don't know if you were like, I don't know. I don't think it was coping. I don't know. It was like overconfidence, but it was confidence, right?
No.
Where would you say
it was confidence?
Where would you say that line is between
confidence
versus overconfidence? You know what I mean? Where do you think you were on that?
I don't know, because I've always been super, and I still am super aware of where I am. Like I can tell you exactly, like, I don't know, like I start looking at a book and I can tell you exactly, okay, this guy knows more than me in this and this and this and that, and a little less than me in this and this and this and that. And it's I'm fine with it. You know, I'm able to appreciate whatever is in front of me. And I know where I stand, that I've always knew. Like, okay, I might say sometimes, and we talked about it years ago, I might say that sometimes I will get overconfident. So I would see myself a little better than I was, but not that much. That it was that amount of, extra self-confidence that, never hurts. So my confidence was always at a specific, limit and never went over that limit, to be
It's
like, I never
interesting to
got
have
to
that
be
level of-
delusional,
Yeah, delusional is the wrong space to be. I'm just curious to understand like where you developed that level of like self-awareness, and then in turn, obviously, like you can go right into delusional very quickly depending on where your overconfidence line is, right? Like always to check yourself. And there's that also, obviously that still comes from a place of humility and being humble. I'm curious to understand like how you developed that soft skill, you know what I mean? That personal sort of like, I know where I am, but I also know I'm not going to go crazy and start thinking I'm the best thing in the world. My shit doesn't stink, right?
Yeah. I think I don't know, but I'm just investigating as we talk. And
it's what we're thinking about.
I've always kept myself in check. I remember even when I was really young, I was always focused on, I don't want to say I was focused on myself, but trying to understand where I was with my head and trying to understand my own thought,
Yeah. That's it. So you kind of developed that soft skill Shawn, you're awful quiet and you keep stepping away from the desk like you don't want to be here. It's okay. You can bring Jim back and we can have Jim come over here and hang out the entire time.
I'm quiet because I'm just listening to Mattteo. The door, Jim left, I assumed to go to the bathroom, but he closed the door, but it's going to lock behind him. So I just popped it open. Then I heard it close again. So I just popped it open again. So he can get back in.
Like between the yawning and then once in a while you drag your like promotional cup onto the screen. You know what I mean?
Get
like,
off. I haven't. I did it one time.
Anyway, what's your thoughts on it, Shawn? You heard Mattteo talk about his thing. Where do you come from when it comes to that? Like the self-awareness, understanding where you are in your career, gauging your overall trajectory and success, potentially like places that you can get better at. Where are you on that?
I don't know if I have if that's a skill that I'm strong in. I think early on as a kid, I was way too overconfident.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I tried to break in and I got that humble pie, that moment of a like true self-awareness about where my work was and what I needed to do, then I became, I think, overly critical for way too long. And I think especially my early years at Marvel, I was so overly critical of everything I did. And then I got to a place where I think I was feeling okay. And then all the work dried up and then that messed with me, and then COVID, but I'm in a good place now. Like I'm confident in my abilities, but as far as my career goes, I'm not confident in that area.
Yeah, that's interesting. Can I follow up on that? And this is for both of you, okay?
Yeah, how about you?
This is for both of you guys.
Oh, you want to follow up on what Shawn said?
Let me not lose, because Shawn said something really great right now, which is like, I'm confident in my craft or whatever it is, but it's not immediately associating itself with my career. Do you guys bind those two things together? Like a reflection of my craft is tied to my, the success of my craft is tied somehow.
That was a problem. I think when I was talking about my early Marvel days, I think that was that was a big part of my problem, was I was tying the success of my career to tell me how my craft was.
Yeah.
So when I wasn't able to,
it was never that way. To me, it was never that way.
Go ahead, man.
That's why I was really not afraid when I couldn't work with Marvel anymore. I was fine with it because I never tied myself, value, my self-worth to which kind of gig I would get.
Yeah.
To me, getting the better and better gig, it's a happy consequence of doing quality work. The same way as the money that comes which is related to the gigs, of course. So it's more or less the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a happy consequence. And I always make sure that things stay that way, meaning that money doesn't have to become the goal. The same way the gig itself, like working a specific character or for a specific publisher, doesn't have to be the goal, but it's a happy consequence.
Sure. Yeah, that's great. There's big stuff that you can take. Like, I don't know how to communicate that to somebody who is at the beginning of their career, the middle of their career, and like further along in their career, right? Like, how do you tell somebody, hey, you need to decouple? You can't associate you were very open about it, Matty. You were like, hey, I still needed a level of external validation for my work, right? But somehow, somewhere in there, you said, but I don't need it to be immediately associated to the kind of work that I'm getting. It's about the work and not about the, how did you say it? You use a term like the bonus, the whatever. What was the term that you were using when you got the job or the whatever? You're like, oh, that's just the
happy consequence, you said?
There you go. Yeah, that's just a happy like you use that as like, oh, that's just a happy consequence of what I do. It doesn't validate my work.
The same way, to be honest with you, sorry to interrupt, but even winning the contest and getting to talk to Topi, it was already a happy consequence because I had already made the switch in my head because I was already doing shows. Like, even without being a professional, I was just traveling. Like, the moment that they called me and they passed me Sergio Topi on the phone, I was in Spain in a show, but I was just attending. I wasn't, tabling or anything. I wasn't a professional. I just went there with my portfolio, just showing stuff to Spanish artists, which that I didn't even know. Was most of them I discovered them at the show, but I decided I'm gonna do shows. And not even like in my backyard. I was going to Spain. I was going already, abroad for shows. And and that's what I kept even after when I started working with Jason and Essential Sequential. I started doing shows in the States. And to be honest with you, there's more artists that do more shows. Usually Italian artists, they only do like New York, San Diego sometimes. Yeah. There's some of them, like, for example, Mirka Andolfo, she does a lot of shows in the States, but like before her, I don't remember like many other Italian artists that would do that many shows other than the main ones. Yeah. There's been a year in which I did like 10 or 12 shows. I was just keeping traveling and doing shows. In the US, right? Or just globally? Yeah. Internationally? Yeah. Yeah. So you can tell the different people. Oh, go ahead. No. I was just I was just closing it. So yeah, you can go. I think to use America as an example, but not exclusive to her, you can tell the like I can see her craft growth too. Year over year, I can see how much better she's getting, and you can tell they're just a different kind of artist. Does that make sense? Right? Stylistically, there's some crossover from America's work into ours. I'm talking about just that laser focus of like, I'm going to go do a bunch of shows because, to your point, Mattteo, you were like, okay, I'm just going to get my stuff out there because that's part of me being a successful entity in the industry. Yeah. And I could tell when I was like, oh, she operates differently than a lot of different people, like her brain works very differently when it comes to like going to the show. And I think similarly, not identically, to where you were at, where you're like, this is what I do. I need to get out there and expose people to my work and get as much of that into traction because that's just the career or the business that I want to be in. Yeah, let me backtrack really quick, right? Shawn, what based on what your takeaway is from what Mattteo just said, right? There's similarities, but it's not identical. What's the thing that you can pull from that? When did you experience that bit where you were like, oh man, I'm really, I've now coupled the worth of my work based on based on the assignments that I'm getting, right? What's the thing that you can take away and be like, if I had heard this, right, back then, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I could pinpoint just one thing. It's
Yeah,
everything. Everything Mateo has said is right on the money. It's I just, if somebody would have said, um, you like, if I like seeing creators I loved, like let's say Jason Pearson.
yeah.
Jason was celebrated in the artistic community.
Hmm.
But I think it was when I was working my last few years at Marvel and seeing like them struggle to have him on a book,
Mm.
or uh, also like I remember like CB Cebulski was talking to me once, and he was talking about like Kyle Baker was on Deadpool Max, and he was like, they should just give it to you. I don't understand why Kyle's on that book. And like to me,
Hmm.
Kyle was like a beacon of like where I wanted to get with my career. And I
Hmm.
started to realize, oh, that like there's a perceived value you have to these publishers as a financial thing, and that
Hmm.
really has nothing to do with your craft. Like in
Mm.
terms of like, because people I thought who were amazing, I saw struggling to have work, and people who I thought
Sure.
were just mediocre were like killing it.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of, and it was right in front of me longer than it was there before I saw it. I just didn't open my eyes to it.
What was the thing? What was the thing that you saw?
Just things like seeing a creator I love struggle, and still with myself holding myself to a standard of, well, the projects I'm getting are pretty low tier, so I'm not that good. But seeing a
Mm.
creator I struggle, not get a great project, I didn't apply that same thinking to me. And I think
Oh, right.
that's my disconnect. I held
Mm.
myself aside from from the world I saw. And I think it
Yeah,
was like, go ahead.
it's interesting to hear both of you talk because I don't think it's exactly the same, right? Which is one, both of which are like external things that are like getting pumped into your brains. But Mateo didn't need that much. It's just
Yeah.
Mateo's
And
ego is out of
As I
fucking
told you, the
control.
process had already started. That was a nice nudge because
Yeah.
back then, and still now, I'm a huge fan of Topi. So hearing from him, it was just
yeah, that's
wow.
amazing.
Okay, it's a
Yeah.
confirmation, but it was a
Yeah.
confirmation that came from a process that had already started. So
Yeah.
probably even if I didn't win that contest, and even if Topi didn't call me to tell me that,
Yeah.
probably things would have gone the same way because I would still have participated to the Marvel contest.
Yeah.
I would still have done everything because I was doing everything. Like as soon as I
Yeah.
saw something, a show to attend, a contest or something, I would just participate. So
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I
so
obviously, I
Go ahead, Shawn.
obviously had, there was something in me that made me believe I can do this, because I never stopped trying to do it. And
Right.
even when things got really bad, I didn't walk away from it. I mean, I hit a bottom place where I almost did, but then I remember like I just like kind of slapped myself sober and was like, no, you can do this. Get your ass up, go make it happen.
Mhm.
I look at Mateo, and I've always thought like, here's a very mentally and emotionally well-adjusted human being. And I think I had to mature and grow up. And I think having to do all that while having little kids and teaching full time, I just didn't have the bandwidth to better myself like I needed to.
Sure. I mean, there are a lot of external factors that we have not taken into account. You just mentioned one, which is like kids. The other one is like, there's a like, when you talk about those pros who are not necessarily, or who are struggling to get those top tier assignments, you don't know how fast they are. There's all sorts of external things that we're not capturing. So it's like, okay, so it only goes so far. But I want to really hone in on the fact that, there is a value in understanding the difference between the quality of your work, right? And how like how you're approaching it versus like, as best as you can, keeping at bay something informing on how good it is because it's another external thing, if that makes any sense, right? Like in Matteo's case, he said it was early in his professional life cycle where he was like, dude, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to continue to get good. I'm going to, but there's value here that I'm not associating these assignments. That's a nice bonus. That's the ice cream on top, but it's not necessarily mean that my work doesn't, my work isn't any good. It's a work in progress. I can still get better, but it doesn't, just because I don't have a Marvel contract, and I'm working for lower tier / publishers, it doesn't mean my work isn't any good, right? There's something really profound about that, right? And I hope that there's a way that each individual who are looking at this, again, regardless of where you are in your career, whether the beginning, middle, or, you're a well-seasoned professional, to be like, I think there's value to be like, get away from the monetary value, right? That's what you're associating it with because you're not on a big name project. Right, because that's what you're associating how good you are because you're not in that space.
Right,
like you need to get away from that. That's a fucking that's a mind killer, as they say.
So Eric, can I ask you like the same question that you asked us? Like, how about you?
Yeah.
Like, when did you find out? Okay, this is the way. Or
I don't know. I mean, I'm similar to you that. The projects that come, and I often am very dismissive whenever I get on a big project. I always say that I fall ass backwards into everything that I've ever done, right? Because I'm so wholly focused on getting better at that thing that's presenting a challenge to me. So I'm doing a lot of like digital. You guys know it because I forward you all the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
As I'm working on it. Very rare is it in these days where it's traditional, right? Because I'm not to say that I'm bored with doing traditional work, but it's just not the thing that I'm into right now. And I think that goes back to like what's motivating us, right? So like right now, I want to get good at digital. I mean, really exceptionally good. And right now, what I'm looking at when it's in my output, opportunities to get better, right? I'm not going to say that it's mediocre, but certainly there's things where I'm like, there's a picture in my head that I'm slowly defining and crystallizing a little bit more, where I'm like, I think I want this version of my work to be represented digitally. And that's always the space that I'm in, which is I need to challenge myself to find a better version of whatever it is that's like I'm really, really hyper focused on. So right now it's like digital and getting better at 3D and getting it better, all of these things. And it just happens to be, to your point, Maddie, sorry, Shawn, to your point, because it's in this industry that values a certain look and feel. And that's always been my thing where it's like, I can't fucking stand that. Right. Like there's a look that everybody's going for where I go like, yeah, but everybody's doing that already. Why would I contribute more to that thing that everybody's going for as opposed to doing it the way I think it should be, if that makes any sense. Right. Totally. So in a way, the ego, I think that's an ego, right, concept, which is like, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it the way I think, right? The way I feel I should. And that's always been a consistent thing in my professional trajectory, which is, Jim Lee draws like that. When I first was starting to break in, Jim Lee draws like that. And everybody who's ever wanted a job wants to draw like Jim Lee because that's the path easiest taken. But I don't want to do that, right? Like I want to help establish something for myself that you can identify it. That's it. And so to answer your question, I think it's when I recognize that things are going well for me career-wise is when people are going like, what are you talking about? You're the guy, right? Like this is the work that we want on these. So that to me are like sort of the markers in my head to be like, oh gosh, I'm not, it's as a matter of fact, it's a sobering moment when somebody goes, oh yeah, that guy draws like you. And I'm like, oh fuck, I'm becoming more of the same now. You know what I mean? It's a moment of like awareness of like, oh, people are incorporating my shit now. I better go do something else. Right? Because it's starting to become the Jim Lee. It's starting to become the norm of like concept art, whatever it may be. So when did I recognize it? I don't know if I ever have. I don't know if I've ever put myself in a situation where it's like, oh, this is easy street. This is easy mode. I think it's because I constantly come up with things that challenge me. The moment the moment I become aware of like, this doesn't take any more effort. This is like, I think we're talking about different things though, Maddie. Like the moment it becomes like easy, I go like, let's go do something else now.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, it makes
think
sense. I was I was thinking about that moment when you're like not worried anymore about the future.
Yeah.
Which is was I was describing earlier when you asked me the
Yeah.
question, like that moment in which, or maybe you've never worried, like I don't know if you come from money or not.
Yeah, that's
like so.
Yeah. Eric,
you're talking about two
and not
things,
only
though,
money.
Right?
Sorry, I moved to
That's
money,
what I wanted
but
to address.
it's not a money thing. It's like, what am I? Who am I gonna be in the future? You know, that moment, which like, to me, it was like, for me, it was like, oh, okay, I'm a comic book artist from now on. That's it.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. I never worried. Shawn, hold on to that question or that point that you were making. Okay. I never thought of it in that context, which is interesting, right? Like I ask it to you as if I've considered it, which I never have, which is like, just like, this is just like what I do. I love drawing, and you guys know it. We sometimes laugh about it, where it's like you said before, Maddie, where you're like, dude, I'm not drawing. Like that's all I want to do is draw, right? So it's never been the kind of thing where I'm kind of like, oh, I've turned the corner, and therefore, like I've never worried about it because I just knew it's who I was, right? In 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right? I never thought about the money component until I had a family, right? When I started to having to consider, oh, wait, I can't make moves on my own, even though nothing has changed in regards to, I agree with you 100%, which is, it's a nice bonus that it comes, right? But once in a while, I'll consider it more, if that makes any sense. Oh, geez, I need to start thinking about how to keep the lights on and how much things cost and where the kids are going to go to school, that kind of a thing. That is a newish thing, right? By way of like 5-6 years ago. But when it comes to like, oh, you're going to pay me to do like, you're going to pay me to freaking do this thing that I think about all the time. Yeah, that's cool. I haven't thought about that in a long, long time. I don't even think I've ever considered it, right? It just happens because it's a nice bonus. I'm very grateful, but it's never been the thing. It's never been like, unless it's unfair, not to be fair, right? Like whenever somebody says, oh, we're going to pay you X amount for these covers, and another company comes to you and they're like, oh, we're going to pay you X amount. Once in a while, I'll care, right?
Oh yeah. No, absolutely.
But this goes to where my brain shifts into, where I try to do as much as I can to take the money off of the table, because I know, like, I'm working with Tom, our good friend, Tommy Edwards, right? The money is not the important part in that exercise. The important part is I get the chance to work with Tommy,
Yeah. Right. Right.
And it doesn't pay as much. But the contrast is, we work with Millar back in Netflix days, right? He's since, his deal with Netflix is over. He's going to go into Dark Horse soon. Congratulations to him. Working with Millar is great because I've always wanted to do it. I didn't know Mark, but I knew his body of work, and man, that was a great opportunity. And oh my gosh, it actually comes with Netflix money. That's the added bonus, but it's never been the thing. It's never been it must be this amount. So I've actively tried to shift my brain away from associating it immediately with the dollar value, unless it's super critical. What were you saying, Shawn? Let's go back.
Let me touch on that point real quick, because I think like you're asking what the shift for me was. The shift for me was when I started thinking about freeing my art from needing the money. And that was kind of around COVID. And so what I've been trying to do since then is build a path of money coming in that will support me, that will free my art from the financial burdens of needing to bring money in. And so that was, I think, the shift that helped me separate career from craft. But to back up a minute, you said when something gets easy artistically, you're just not interested. And that's exactly my wiring. So like when it brought me back to the episode where we talked about photo tracing and why I don't like it. I think because it would feel easy for me to do that. Like, not that all artists who do it aren't bringing anything to the table on top of it. Someone like Tommy is a brilliant artist and I look up to highly, but there are a bunch of artists. It's just, I look at the work and it just looks like, oh, that's easy. Like you just traced a photo and threw some filters on top. So, and that gets back to why do I prefer to work traditionally with paints or ink with brushes? It's because that's the harder way from my perspective to do things. And it informs me more to take the hard way because it's constantly teaching and challenging me. Because
I think that's what it comes down to, right? Which is like you just find it more challenging, right?
Yes.
And then your elitist brain kicks in and you diminish everybody else, you know? Like, what a fucking jerk. By the way, just as a point of reference, I just love tracing. Tracing is the thing that I love doing the most. And so this one, Shawn and I always argue offline how much I love tracing. So when he's making that commentary, if people think of that as an external thing, like, oh, Shawn, who are you talking about? So, this artist, this artist, this. Shawn's talking about me. Like he just tries to slide it under the fucking conversation. But like fucking tracer.
Yeah, exactly. I just saw an interview on Instagram, a reel promoting a con, and it was an interview with someone who just traces photos. And I sat there and listened, and it was just like, there was nothing to say. Like, I was just like, why are you interviewing this person about craft when it's just,
I mean, like,
yeah, it's just so
listen
weird.
Listen to this elitist, so Matty. This guy is fucking, can't stand to be in the same room as tracers.
No, I'm separating. I'm not grouping them all together. I'm saying this artist in particular, I don't feel like someone like Tommy. Yeah, let's talk about process all day. I'm going to learn. Yeah. But this artist, like when I see this artist's work, I just don't see, there's not much craft involved. It's like a bunch of trickery.
The reason why I bring this up, and it came out pretty organically, but it is an interesting thing because I'd been thinking about it when I was drawing. Like, is there some point where is it something I was reflecting on me was like at some point in my process in which I got into a really comfortable space and I kind of let it go on for too long. And the answer was yes. And I was really upset at myself for letting it go on for too long, to be like, I should not have let myself get into this quote unquote comfort because it's never worked for me long term. It worked short term, Right. And so the reason why I was hyper focusing on that is because I wanted to learn 3D for the longest time. But man, I came up with all sorts of reasons not to do 3D. I don't have any time, kids, my job, my schedule, my blah. And I laugh at it now and it's really annoying as I went through all the reasons. And I thought like, I guess you just didn't want it that much. Right. I guess it wasn't, you didn't want it bad enough to go and learn it. And now this hindsight being, 2020, like, I guess now that you have to learn it, you're compelled to. Now there's a different motivating factor. But then I needed to unpack that as well. I'm like, do I work better when I need to freaking do it, as opposed to like, comfort, like again, but then that goes back to what I was talking about. I'm like, I needed to be more true to myself to be like, oh, you're comfortable right now. Right? Go look for the thing and really adhere to it. Like really be totalitarian about like, you're comfortable, go look for the next uncomfortable thing that gets you better at your craft.
And that's exactly what happened with me in wanting to paint. It was COVID. I was like, I'm going to learn to paint, but I could have prevented myself from going down that road by thinking like you were like, I'm going to show my ass for a while. And that's uncomfortable.
Oh, this is going to be so shitty for a while, and it's going to show.
Right. So then I did it, and it was fun and challenging, and I was constantly learning, and I was selling like commissions and stuff. But once I started getting hired to do it, that was like, whoa, am I prepared for this?
No, I mean, you have to live in that space, right? You fucking made your bed. Now you got to go fucking sleep
and that's exactly it. I was like, I got to this point.
Go fucking do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
In Matteo's case, though, like what I'm seeing a lot is by the way, people don't know what they're fucking in for once your book comes out, pal. Right? Yeah. Even I don't know. Like I've only seen a handful of pages, and I'm just seeing newer panels now. I'm like, what the fuck is this panel? I've never seen this
Right.
in the set that you've sent us, which is great. I'm surprised and excited for it.
Yeah,
but
me
if
too.
I'm like this, I can't imagine people's experiences will be. But you are very candid about telling people, this writing thing is new to me.
Yeah.
That's got to be something for you. There's got to be something in there that makes you go, it's new, but I'm going to fucking do it anyway.
Right.
That's why
Sean's
I'm not.
I'm going to show my ass for a little bit.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Okay.
No, go ahead.
So
I want to.
That's why we're talking about it recently with Nick Pitara.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not using an editor, because I want the purest feedback there can be once my thing comes out. So if people are gonna say it's shitty or it doesn't work here, it would have been better if a writer would read it and say, okay, this could have been better if you put it this way instead of this way, or blah, blah, blah. Whatever people are going to be saying, they're going to be saying it about my thing with no interference at all. So if it sucks, at least I know exactly where I stand, Yeah. And if everybody says that it sucks, it means that I suck at writing, and I'll get all the feedback and I'll start improving,
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's interesting. Actually, that goes back to what you were talking about when it comes to your art, right? Like you did something in the past. I don't know what it is because you didn't talk about your process. Like you had always had enough self-awareness to know where you are artistically, right? Yeah. And I'm going to guess, this is just a guess. You tell me whether it's wrong. It's similar to what you're doing with your writing now. Yeah, it's similar to what you're going through now when it comes to your art, when you're writing, right? You want to know where you are in that skill, and the only way you have an idea of where you are, right, is to get that really raw feedback from people. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's accurate, and not only that, like what helps me, I think, and this is where I'm getting with my self judgment. I don't know how to say it. Like, sorry, I'm losing words as I speak. But the understanding where you're at, it always comes from observation. If you're a good observer, you're able to analyze what's around you. Meaning, back then when I was young, I used to read comics. And I used to analyze them. So why this is better than this, and why this story is more successful than this? Do I like this thing? Why do I like it? Oh, this is cool. The way they solved this problem in terms of storytelling. This is a really cool way to solve this problem. Okay. So if you're a good observer, you learn how to judge quality in things. And then if you're detached enough from yourself, meaning that you're not into yourself too much, but you learn how to be objective about your stuff, you'll easily, well, not easily, it's never easy, but you'll be kind of able to compare what you're doing with what you usually see. So generally speaking, the idea that I have is that what I'm doing with my book, in terms of story, let's just focus on the story because I'm a new writer. So in terms of what I'm doing, I think it can be put amongst a lot of other books that I wrote, that I read. That's the feeling that I have. Let's see if my spirit of observation is right. I think I had a feeling that it's right. So I don't think it's going to be the best book ever written. I don't think it's going to be at the level of Watchmen or something like that. But I think it can compete because I've read books. I know how a book works. I'm not, a veteran writer, so I don't know all the in and outs of a book, but I have an idea more or less. So that's, but again, it comes from a spirit of observation. In the same way with art. Like I see what's around and I know where to place myself in there.
Dude, I just had this conversation last week with our friend Ollie. He was asking, is Mattteo going to have an editor? on his book, and I said no, and for the reasons you just said, and then I said, but I know it's going to be good because I know Matteo as a creator, not just someone who draws, but you have a critical way of looking at the material you've seen, analyzing it, digesting it. So I said, I know it's going to be good.
Yeah.
And it's everything you just said. And I agree. I know it's going to be good.
There's something I wanted to
and trust me, there's
going
to be mistakes in there and a lot of stuff that
I'm
could
not
have
saying there
been
won't
done
be.
better, you know, and
Right.
that belongs to the learning process. So I'll grab
Sure.
all the things that are not wrong, all the mistakes and stuff like that. Remember the feeling of shame of having made those mistakes, and then try not to make them again for my next book, you know?
Sure.
We're going to have to march Matteo through the village naked with a bell saying shame.
Yeah.
Shame, like on Game of Thrones.
There's
Jamie,
something I wanted to.
Jamie, you got it. You got it. You can do that.
Shame. Shame.
I wanted to follow up on this thing that Mattteo said, which is like, you know, it's important to observe, but I also, and here's the part that I want to add, right? The observation thing is great, and I think it's coupled in here. So, this is not a big addition. The observation thing is great, but there's also something that you said, Mattteo, that may not be captured in the observation comment, which is like you were analytical about why that thing is working, right? That's something else, right? The observation bit is like, oh, that worked. I'm probably misrepresenting it, so you correct me, okay? Like, oh, that's cool. That's the observation part. That's you observing, understanding it. But then there's the analytical part. It's like, why is that? Why is that working? You know what I mean? Like, why is that solving a particular problem? You know, I think that's the added layer that I would hope to help highlight, because it's cool. And like, I look at Alex Ross's shit and I'm like, fuck, man, that's fucking amazing. You know, that works. That's great painting or whatever it is. But the added level is like being analytical of like, why is that working so well? Or why isn't it working so well? You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's something else that we can forward to people who are in whatever stage that they are in their journey. You know, it's exciting about what you're talking about. And again, it goes back to this like level of confidence, not because you're right all the time. And I mentioned this to my wife, right? It's not about the confidence of being right. It's about the confidence of being able to recover when you do something wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know where that comes from. Some people are just born, like some people are built with it, like you were. You're like, whatever, I'm good. And now I'm going to go see how good it is. Right. That's a level of confidence that not many people have. And I want to understand like how to communicate that to people so that regardless of where they are, even if they weren't brought up with it, where they are in their career, to be like, be confident enough to make mistakes. Right. Because the mistake isn't the end goal. You know, the mistake is understanding and then recovering. Yeah. Right. I don't know how to communicate that to people very well.
It's I think it's a matter of being syntonic with what you're doing.
No,
and it goes back to what we were talking. Sorry, I'm translating straight from Italian to English. So I don't know if syntonic
what's the word?
Means something in English. So
I'm gonna look.
It's basically like there's no like this is really hard to explain if you don't know. I was hoping that syntonic would exist in English as well. So it's basically
but I don't know the word.
There's no internal conflict between me and who I am. Meaning, there's harmony. Meaning that I am a comic book artist, and I believe I should be a comic book artist. The same way, for example, like another thing we were examining with my therapist, it's being vegetarian. I've been vegetarian for 26 years now. Okay. And I feel so vegetarian that if tomorrow the three of us are having dinner and you just as a joke tell me, oh, Mattteo, I just ordered, I don't know, crocodile stick with a side of whatever, like a really crazy dish. I'm like, you know what? Let me try it, because that's the only chance in my life that I will have to try that.
I see.
And that
It doesn't threaten
make me,
you.
No, it doesn't make me
Right,
less vegetarian.
I understand.
Even if tomorrow and if you film me and you put me on Instagram on a reel of me eating crocodile dick, and people will be like, but you told me you were a vegetarian.
Jamie,
I'm still vegetarian. I don't care if you don't consider me to be vegetarian, because I know, and it's super deep in me, that I'm vegetarian.
Yeah.
So I can even eat meat for once as a joke because I am vegetarian.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of social media, where people have to constantly prove they're something and they're threatened by everything else.
Just for our audience who are interested, here's the dictionary definition of syntonic, which is of a person. This is in psychology, okay? Of a person, responsive to and in harmony with their environment, so that effect is appropriate to the given situation. I got to go read that probably 20 times before I understand its impact.
Mattteo, you knew an English word we didn't know.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I think the guy knows many interesting
never
English
stop learning
words that
with
we
me.
don't know.
Never.
That's a fucking ego. All right, we're 5 minutes over, guys. I think that was a pretty good episode.
That was a great episode.
Can I plug a little thing? Because by the time
course.
this episode comes out, I think it will be out. So my website, www.matteoscalera.com,
Oh, wow.
is
That's
now
fast.
on. It's not on yet now. It's about to be, but it's the time that the episode comes out, I think it will be.
Sure.
And I really hope I'm putting a lot of myself into that. So there's gonna be a nice how do you call it, newsletter service that I wish all of you would subscribe to. And I'm gonna try to make it as personal as possible. So it's not gonna be like, hey guys, my new book is out, just go grab it. I'm trying to make it. I don't know if you ever saw, for example, Louis C.K.'s newsletter. It's really personal. You can tell it's him writing. So it's gonna be personal, and I'm not gonna bother you like every time. So it's gonna be only like, I'm planning on doing it like 6 times a year, more or less. And every time it's gonna be for important stuff, like for a book coming out, or for mostly for discount codes, like coupon codes and stuff like that, for my original art. And yeah, that's it. And so I hope, and I don't know, that this is the most important thing. Like, why should you subscribe aside from the coupons and my funny jokes in the newsletter? If you subscribe, you'll have access to almost 60 pages, like unpublished sketchbook with all my layouts.
Excellent.
A lot of stuff that you've never seen. So it's just for the people that will be subscribing to it. And I'm still debating. We talked about it recently, guys. I'm still debating within myself if I should make it downloadable as well, maybe low resolution, or if I should make it a higher resolution version online only. I'm still debating. So people, when you watch this episode, please let me know what you think, because I'm still thinking, or maybe I could do both. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I think it's great, Mattteo. It's going to be great. I think your site
it's going to work. It's going to work,
awesome.
pal.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Right,
Thank you,
know
guys.
this. But you already know this.
Yeah, I already knew. Tell me something that I don't know.
Exactly.
All right, bye. We're stopping now. Bye.
Inkpulp podcast.
Hey guys, my new sketchbook, Dumb Shark, is finally out.
That's great, Fratello. Congrats. Eric, what do you think?
Wow, Mattteo. This book has really changed how I think about art. The style, the details, the inking techniques, not to mention the colors. Everything on this book is off the chart. You are so far ahead of any other artist, especially me. I know I always say I don't like your Mr. Freeze book, but that's actually a lie. I was just jealous of your incredible talent because I love everything you do, and sadly, I know deep in my heart that I'll never be at your extraordinary level. You truly are the best artist on planet Earth. This book is a game changer, man. I think everyone out there should go and order Matteo's new art book, Dumb Shark, before it sells out.
Gee willikers, Eric, that was an incredible endorsement. You really made me want to buy it. How can I get my hands on it?
You can find it on www.essentialsequential.com, or if you're in Europe, you can order it on www.pulps.fr.
Wow, Eric. I didn't know you were such a big fan of mine. Thank you. I really don't need to add anything else. You said it all.
What an asshole.
Wait, what?